Today is February 21st. My name is Eduardo Chavez. Grab your PS Vita and welcome to today's Broken Vita Show. Before I begin today's video, really quick, if you guys can go ahead and either subscribe, like, or comment on this video, it would help me out tremendously. Please, 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 if you're able to do that, do so now. Either subscribe, like, or comment. Doing so helps me out tremendously, and I will greatly appreciate it. So, oh man, has there been a lot going on in the video game industry in the last few weeks. First off, Sony recently shut down Bluepoint Games. This one is a little surprising because Bluepoint Games hasn't released any new games as of recently. I think from my understanding, the last actual game that they released was prior to Sony even purchasing them in 2021. In other words, Sony bought them. They released nothing other than helping out Ragnarok come out, and then they literally released nothing after the purchase, which is really weird. And then what's also odd is that during, at least when Sony owned them, they were working on a long-rumored live service game. I believe it was something related in the God of War universe, but that of course was never actually released. In other words, Sony made this weird purchase in 2021. Bluepoint Games released nothing, and then they just shut them down. And it really sucks because, you know, Bluepoint Games has a good track record of releasing really good games, especially in the remakes area. So you would think that if Sony really thought this thoroughly, it would make sense to keep Bluepoint Games to continue releasing games in the remake category, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I don't understand why you would purchase a studio that specializes in remakes and then have them make a live service game, not release a live service game, and not release any remakes. Like, it's really weird. And it's unfortunate because you can tell the guys that, you know, the people working in Bluepoint Games, that they're very talented. They released a Demon Souls remake. They helped out with the Shadow of the Colossus remake. They even helped out with the God of War remake, if I recall correctly, back in 2013. So they're a really talented team. So for Sony to just get rid of them like that, it's really unfortunate. And the biggest question that I have is, why exactly would Sony do this? Like, I honestly can't think of a reason other than, hey, let's cut down costs. Let's try to save some money here. But I honestly don't see how even shutting down one studio with like 70 people, from my understanding, like how that's sufficient enough to, you know, amount for a lot of money. But that's just really odd. I don't know why they did it. And again, especially when they're really talented like that. But, you know, Sony's gonna Sony, I guess. So the second topic that I wanted to briefly talk about is Phil Spencer announcing his retirement and leaving Microsoft and Xbox. So this one admittingly kind of upsets me a little bit, because I honestly believe that part of the reason why Xbox is in the current hole that it's currently in is mainly due to the Activision purchase that was made not too long ago. And that purchase was, of course, helmed by none other than Phil Spencer. He is the guy who ultimately made that call to buy Activision. And the reason that this upsets me is because with his recent departure, you know, it's being noted that he's retiring. So my assumption is that if he is indeed retiring, he's not just, you know, leaving Microsoft and Xbox, but, you know, ultimately the workforce. Now, I could be wrong in that regard, but that's the way I'm interpreting it based on the headline that I saw. So there's a chance it could be wrong, but still, that whole scenario of him leaving due to retirement, it just doesn't sit right with me. And the reason it doesn't sit right with me is mainly because he's the one who made the call to purchase Activision, which, you know, I get why they did it. But because of that decision, there's a lot of people who ended up being fired, let go, and it was solely based on his decision, you know, to purchase Call of Duty. And a lot of people ended up, not having jobs because of this. And I get it, Phil Spencer is a figurehead. He is the guy who you think about when you think of Xbox, or at least that's what Microsoft was initially hoping for. I understand, he's beloved, and I'm sure he made a bunch of really good decisions while still with Microsoft and Xbox. It's just kind of really weird because, him leaving with retirement is just, it's too comfortable for me. I get, I get that he's ultimately leaving a legacy behind, but still, a lot of decisions that he made, I feel like, maybe others shouldn't have suffered because of it. And I get it, he is, a gamer at heart, he makes all these choices based on what he believed was the right thing. It just seemed like, him leaving comfortably doesn't sit right with me. But, for better or worse, Xbox is now in its current state that it's in. So let's hope nothing for the best for Phil, the people affected, and for Xbox as a whole. And the biggest question that now I'm left with is what's going to happen to Xbox now? It's really interesting to see because just a few years ago, it didn't seem like Xbox could be in a situation that it's currently in. Now it's stuck without its figurehead, without, I believe her name is Sarah Bond, which was supposed to be the second successor to Phil Spencer. And Xbox is in a really, really interesting spot. I honestly don't know what's going to happen. These upcoming next few years are going to be both exciting and scary at the same time. But, oh man, let's hope Xbox stays around. I'm never owned an Xbox myself, but I would hate to see them leave the console space or even the gaming space. So I'm really hopeful they pull through. So yeah, man, it's going to be really interesting. Next few years, very, very interesting. And the last topic of discussion that I wanted to talk about today, or at least briefly, is the whole situation happening with HighGuard. So HighGuard, if you guys haven't found out recently, looks like might be shutting down, but it's only been released within the past 2 weeks or so, which is really crazy. This is almost similar to the whole Concord situation that happened just about a year ago. It's just crazy to see how, there's so much hype for this game. The game ends up being released, and just within the span of a few days, everyone gets fired, and then it just seems like the game has no legs, and it's crazy. We have never encountered this other than Concord, and now it seems to be, this is the second time something similar has happened, and that begs the question, will it happen again? Because this is becoming a really weird occurrence. It's just crazy to me how, like, you can work on something for so long, multiple years, have it released, expect, people to see or play this thing, and then within the matter of weeks, one, you lose your job, and two, all that hard work is gone. It's still there, but let's face it, there's a good chance it might not survive. And it's just a really unfortunate situation. It just sucks for, the developers who work so hard in that game. Shout out to them. I'm sure, they need all the support they can get right now, especially with layoffs and stuff. So yeah, man, it just sucks having you work for so many years, wanting to release this thing and then just not getting the feedback that you want. But it seems like it's part of the industry now. So yeah, man, it just sucks. And really quick, there's actually something that I wanted to address with some of my recent viewers who were able to see my recent State of Play reactions. So I was accused of rage baiting because of the negative way I reacted towards the new Star Wars game. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a Star Wars guy. I used to be, but the story overall, it ended up not being what I wanted, and I just became not a Star Wars guy. So anything Star Wars related, I'm not gonna lie, I just don't find any interest in it. Even the latest two new games with I believe his name is Cal Kestis. I heard they were good, but I'm not gonna play them. And I didn't mean to upset like some of you guys. It's just that game is just not for me. And that was my genuine reaction. I swear it wasn't like I was making it up or anything. That game is just, again, not for me. But if it is for you, if that's something you're looking forward to, you know, don't let my decision or my enthusiasm affect you in any way. Like, yeah, man, play that if you really want to. Hopefully it is the game that you want it to be. And again, don't take my negative reaction towards it as, you know, as offensive to you. If you want to play that game and enjoy that game, by all means do so. I didn't mean to, you know, upset anyone, but you know, it is what it is. It's just not for me. But again, if it's for you, by all means play it. I hope it's good. In retrospect, I did see it again. It didn't look that bad, admittingly. So, you know, hopefully it ends up being better than we thought. So yeah, I've been talking for way too long already. Without further ado, here is today's episode of the Broken Vita Show. Today's topic mainly consists of discussing the PS6 and why I think it might not be a good idea to delay it. So without further ado, enjoy the show. The Switch 2 has been out for a while now, and ever since its release, all eyes have now shifted towards Sony and Microsoft over what they're working on next. AMD, who is a close partner to Microsoft, has already suggested that 2027 will be the year where we finally see the new Xbox. As for Sony, the PlayStation powerhouse hasn't said anything specific about when we'll be seeing the new PS6, but through some recent reporting, we're starting to get a clearer picture of when we'll possibly see this new generation console. So far, it seems like we'll be waiting quite a while for the PS6, as reports suggest that due to the increase in prices of memory components, Sony is okay with pushing the PS6 to a 2028 or even 2029 release window. In other words, a full 2 or 3 years from here on out. Wow. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make one thing clear. I have owned a PS5 since it was released in that first batch of 2020. I was able to get my hands on one during a time where it seemed impossible to find one. Because I owned one so early, you would think I would be eager for a new console at this point. However, even though I am an early adopter of the PS5, I'm here to tell you that I'm fully okay with Sony delaying the PS6 until 28 or even 2029. Personally, I'm still juggling a plentiful of PS4 titles that I didn't get through from last generation. And from what I've seen, the truly PS5 exclusive titles, even though there's now a good amount of them, for me have only been more than a handful. Now, having stated all that, this is why I also believe that delaying the PS6 might be a bad idea. So, let's play devil's advocate for a little bit. If the PS6 will really be delayed until 2028 or 2029, here are a few reasons why that wouldn't be the best idea. In other words, I am pleading to you, Sony, don't delay the PS6. And here's the why. First off, PS3 emulation. When the PS5 was still in the rumor stages, there were already talks about it being fully backwards compatible with the PS4. However, that same idea was not something that we would be sure of for the PS3. What ends up happening next is that the PS5 is fully released, and instead of proper PS3 emulation, we get PS3 streaming. Because even to this day, Sony wants to have a way of justifying their Gaikai purchase from 2012. I am kidding, of course, but let's face it, PS3 streaming is not the solution we wanted. This is where the PS6 coming in. And here's where it should at least make sense. How great would it be to have that beast of a console released with a way to play one of the best gaming generations ever made? The PS6 can be that gateway for players who missed out on that PS3 era. We've already seen that full PS3 emulation is not something that is too far off in the distance. So with the PS6 having an earlier release window, our chances of playing some great PS3 titles on modern hardware would definitely increase. As for the PS5 having PS3 emulation, I honestly think that ship has sailed. I don't see a future where the PS5, already so deep into its life cycle, would be getting a major feature such as this. Thus, PS3 emulation will be right at home with the PS6. Next up, the missing handheld. Much to Sony's surprise, the PlayStation Portal has been a surprise hit. Who would have thought that playing the PlayStation games on the go would be a stellar idea? Still, the PS Portal is not a PSP, and dare I say, it's definitely not a PS Vita, aka the greatest handheld ever made in the history of man. We've already heard the rumors that the PS6 is meant to come alongside a portable version of itself, or at least something along those lines. In other words, if the PS6 were to continue being delayed, we would also continue to be without a true successor to the PSP and Vita. Let's not forget that Microsoft is already ahead of PlayStation in this area, having released a half-branded Xbox handheld just last year. The more the PS6 is delayed, the more the handheld will be delayed too. And trust me, I'd much rather play Final Fantasy Tactics on a handheld than on a ridiculously large TV that I only rented because I just wanted to watch the Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show. And lastly, the new features. This is the final reason why I believe that delaying the PS6 might be a bad idea. All of the new features that we'll be missing out on. We all know that big companies like Sony are always doing research and filing patents behind the scenes. Some notable patents as of late include what seems to be a controller with a full touchpad, and also some kind of AI assistant that's supposed to be helpful during gameplay sessions. Now, to me, those both sound like horrible ideas. But that isn't to say that Sony doesn't have anything else up their sleeve. Here's the thing. By delaying the PS6, we might be missing out on some new features that might improve our gaming experience overall. That isn't to say that we will have something as revolutionary as a new joystick or even a new trophy system, but it would be really cool to see what exactly Sony has in store for us. I've been a huge fan of the haptics, for example, that were added to the DualSense, and I still think that Sony could do so much more with their camera. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm optimistic about these missing, or at least adding these new features in the PS6. And we will get these features once the PS6 is ultimately released. As I have stated before, I'm okay with Sony delaying the PS6 for a 2028 or even 2029 release. I think there's still a lot of horsepower to unpack from the PS5. And with a few more years under the belt, we might be able to see what exactly that device is truly capable of. But I would be lying if I said that there might also be some drawbacks for not releasing the PS6 earlier than expected. New features that might improve our gameplay. Finally playing Final Fantasy 13 on modern hardware. And even finally getting that sweet PS Vita successor that we've all been dreaming of. Might not happen until the PS6. So Sony, by all means, keep supporting the PS5. But don't let that stop you from giving us the PS6 of all of our dreams.